Modern Dadhood. Modern Dadhood podcast.
Hey, man.
Hey,
Is that a fresh new haircut I spy?
it is indeed. I just got it this evening. A nice summer.
It's a
my
cool looking
headphones, so you can
fade.
see it. A real short there on the sides, a little shorter on the top there.
You go in saying I want a fade?
No, I just go in and Stacy just starts to cut my hair and I don't say anything.
They always ask me what I want every time I go to anywhere, and I say, I want this, but shorter.
It's shorter.
Just envision this significantly shorter.
I want my hair cut.
Don't do anything that doesn't look like it would grow out to this.
Yeah,
Maybe we should say what the podcast is called.
I can do that. This, friends, is Modern Dadhood. It's an ongoing conversation about the joys, challenges, and general insanity of being a dad in this moment. Let me take a quick sip of this fiddlehead. Hold on. Oh, that hits the spot. My name is Mark Checkett, and I'm a dad, and I have twin boys who are 5 years old.
And I'm Adam J. Flaherty, and I'm a dad to two girls, two amazing daughters who are 9 and 6.
You don't have to say amazing. They're not here.
I just want to pre-qualify things for any listeners who might be new and not just assume that they're amazing, because they are.
Yeah, same. Yeah, same. I mean, it's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. We say it all the time. The emotions as well. Some days you go up and you feel really good and you think, this is great. I'm happy. Everybody's happy. This is great. Then you crest that hill. Then you go down.
So thanks to all of our listeners for choosing to spend a little bit of time with us here on Modern Dadhood. We like to remind everybody early on in the episode that all of our episodes, if there's any that you haven't heard, you can go to our website, moderndadhood.com, and find all of them there in the episode archive. You can search by name or topic. You can also find us wherever podcasts are.
Such as
Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify. Stitcher's going away. We got an email today. They're sunsetting Stitcher.
What
I don't even know who
happens?
owns Stitcher. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Spotify, wherever else you find podcasts, you can find Modern Dadhood. So please do take a moment to subscribe. Leave us a 5-star rating if you like the show, and maybe a couple of kind words in a review. And I do want to remind everybody that this episode is a part 2 episode.
That's right.
The second half of our conversation with Privacy Professional Marc Groman. You are very welcome to go back and listen to part 1 if you haven't heard that yet. It was a great chat about technology and privacy and all about his podcast called Their Own Devices.
And if you listen to this episode first and then go back and listen to that episode, well, it'll be a little bit like watching a Christopher Nolan film for you then.
So we will get into part 2 of our chat with Marc Groman soon, won't we?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, over the weekend, several days ago, you and I took a little jaunt down to Beantown.
We
Went
did.
to Boston.
We did.
And we got to see somebody it was on our show recently, which doesn't always happen, that we get to meet our guests in person.
No, I was thinking about that too. I was thinking about, in the history of the podcast, we're at 88 episodes. The guests that we've had that we've actually seen, some of them we've actually recorded in person. The great Kretschy.
Great Kretschmar, yeah.
Was an in-person recording. Steve Levine, right? We got a chance to meet him and record in person.
Right.
But not a lot of our guests, we don't even get to see them, much less record with them in person. And yeah, we drove down in the Highlander to see none other than
our friend Dustin Nickerson, who was a great guest just 2 episodes ago. But he was great. He was hilarious.
Very funny.
Couldn't be nicer. We let him know we were going to be there and got to say hello to him before he jetted back off to the airport, and really looking forward to the next time we get to see him.
And for anybody who's like I did, just poured over all of his stand-up content that's on YouTube, everything that he was working on when Adam and I went to see him sounded like all really new and really funny material. So I would say keep your eyes open for some new Dustin Nickerson stuff hitting the YouTube shelves in the near future.
Do you recall, would you like to share with the listeners where we left off in our amazing conversation, part 1 with Marc Groman?
I'd love to. I think where we left off was about how amplified things are and the connection, like when you and I were kids and when Marc Groman were kids passing notes in school, for example, that note might be intercepted by a teacher who then reads it to the class, and it's embarrassing, and maybe it makes your day or your month or something really terrible, but it sort of fizzles and ends there because your class is only so big or your school is only so big. But these days, the kids, they're connected to so many other people through the devices, and things get out of control. They get out of their hands and go so much further than perhaps they realize. And certainly folks like me and you, maybe we sort of comprehend that amplification, and maybe it's something that we need to learn more about, become more familiar with to help our kids. I think that's about where we left off.
One other question.
Hit me.
Do you ever send a sext? Ever
Have
sext
I
anyone?
ever sent
Yeah,
a
you ever sext anyone? Yeah.
I think I can pretty safely say no. That's not a thing that I've ever done. Now, I've been married for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I think I remember getting my first, it was a flip phone. It was a Samsung flip phone that had a camera on it.
And you thought about some stuff, didn't you? Some things crossed your mind.
100%. Yeah. No, but I don't think I've ever sent a sext, even to my own lovely wife.
Do you think she would appreciate it if you did? Or do you think she'd be mortified?
I think she would. Let me think of how my wife of, I want to say 16 years would think about a sext. I don't know. Let me just do it now.
How do you're going to take, I thought you were going to invite her in to ask her, but no you're actually, you've taken out your phone. Okay.
Yeah. Should it be a pic for my first ever sext? Should it be words?
Yeah, it's a picture.
Or is it just picture, no words?
I was picturing a picture, but I wasn't picturing it in too much detail, just to put your mind at ease a little bit.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
But would you send that to her thinking that it could possibly be seen by other people?
100%.
Would you assume that it would be seen by other people?
Well, I mean, I don't consider myself necessarily a paranoid person, but I do kind of once in a while, I sort of think like, who else has access to like literally every single thing on my phone?
Yeah.
Because there's got to be multiple entities that do. I think that would be enough to scare me from doing anything even remotely close to that. You know, like, It's my phone. It's my stuff. But like, is it?
Oh, yeah. Who has access to that?
Yeah. What about you, mister? Asking all the questions?
No, I've never sent a text. I mean, I've sent a text. I've never sent a sext.
I see. Have you ever received a sext? Now that's a question.
I don't believe I ever have sent or received a sext message. But I mean, like, we're kind of old dorks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's like probably expected.
All right. Back to Groman.
Roll tape.
It'll be really interesting to see how in 20 or 30 years from now, our kids are talking to their kids about this stuff. I mean, obviously, social media will be a completely different thing then. But I just think back to growing up. I'm 40 years old, born in the early 80s. The internet became a thing, when I was an adolescent, and my parents were a little bit on the older side when they had me. And so they never experienced the internet or really had interest in learning it alongside me. So I was figuring it out as I went with little oversight. And I guess I just feel like we're the three of us included are in this sort of unique group that it was the Wild West. There was not the level of communication around the dangers of it.
Well, it's interesting. We spoke with some either older college students, so mid or, like 22, 23, maybe 21, and even asking them, what do you wish you had known, or what should have been done differently when you were handed your cell phone when you were 14? And they had extraordinary insight in, when we spoke to these kids about, looking back, I was not ready for a phone in 7th grade. That's when I made my mistakes, and my parents had no idea what I had access to. Not a clue about what the platforms were or what we were sharing. And so you can hear from kids about they wish they had had a little bit more of a guiding hand, a little more education, and been able to talk to mom and dad instead of the parents tuning out or checking out when the kid says, I'm on this app or on this platform. Because I think kids look back and do think, I've heard many kids say, gee, I wish I had deleted TikTok sooner because I was spending 6 hours a day just going through these videos, and man, did I waste time.
I think that about myself, and my own usage, even if it's just LinkedIn or Instagram, it's the same. You think about how much time you've spent, and I think, wow, boy, I could have been learning so much or been so much more productive or making more money or spending more quality time with my family.
And again, I know, we could go on and on because there's so many issues, but I want to reiterate my belief that in general, there are many potential benefits. And there's access to quality information. And for vulnerable teenagers and for minority groups, there could be access to data that they can't get from parents, right? For certain kinds of groups or teenagers looking for connections or important information. All of that is really beneficial. Yeah. But there's so much out there that presents potential negatives, injury, and harm. And so it's incumbent on us to understand it. I'm also going to throw in one other point, because as you know, I live in DC. This cannot be the simple responsibility of mom and dad or the parents. Industry must have responsibility for this. And in the United States, we do not have a comprehensive privacy law. We're the only democracy on the planet that does not have one. It's appalling and long overdue. Nor do we have a comprehensive children's privacy law in this country that addresses this. And, we need to place responsibility and frankly liability where it belongs, which is on the companies that produce the platforms and the content and code and build this. And we have not done that.
How can you, this is a loaded question, but in a country that is so absolutely divided in every possible way, how do you implement something overarching like that and get everybody to agree to it?
The more general topic, which I'm working on now in full disclosure about general privacy, that's challenging and it may not be possible in the near term. But there are huge bipartisan groups that are working on issues around children's privacy, and there's potential for it to move. The problem is it tends to get derailed by other more pressing issues, which there are. But at some point, I think children's bills, privacy laws have been introduced in 10 Congresses. It is time to do something to actually pass one of these. And so that we have, again, adequate balanced protections and regulations for our children online, because the science is there. Like, we don't have to debate this any longer. It's got a dramatic potential impact, negative mental health impact on kids, and they're being exploited in many ways. We need to have a law.
Yeah. It can be so frustrating to witness the pace at which we move towards action sometimes, when to your point, we're not waiting for results of some study or anything anymore. Right. We know where there are places that we should be focusing, and that's going to continue. Right. There comes a point where.
The inability to act in a timely way will continue. Yeah. And the pace of evolution, technology is just going to increase exponentially. Right. We've been talking mostly about social media platforms, but I'm working on the metaverse, virtual reality. Wow, and increasingly artificial intelligence and machine learning. So if you think we're facing difficult issues now, you haven't seen anything yet.
Right. And that's what I mean about this like seemingly exponential rate at which these things advance and grow and change and come into our lives. I mean, we've sort of been we've been talking a lot about like the device, which oftentimes is the iPhone, but these, I mean, it's to your point with like video games. I mean, like kids play video games probably and have a device that allows them to play video games way earlier in their lives than they might be given a phone.
Right,
and
absolutely.
are we thinking about that in the same way? Because we absolutely should be, right? Because there is that, there's that connection.
And here lies the rub for parents and why, I'm an expert and I couldn't keep up with it because, you have to understand the game console. We could go on, but in other words, each game console comes with their own issues, parental controls. Every game console has interactivity. They all have sensors now. They have cameras. They have microphones. And you have the ability to play and speak with strangers across the entire world. There are ways you can link it with accounts so you're buying things and linking it with other computers. And so, this is not the Atari of 1980.
Right. These
are also supercomputers that are used for highly sophisticated interactive gaming that can have great benefit. But for boys in particular, we had tons of issues with gaming and understanding how the consoles work and how the restrictions work, parental controls work. Can we limit certain kinds of games, limiting in-game purchasing, turning off features that allowed communicating with strangers? All of that was really important when he was younger.
Not to harp on this point too much, but it seems like in the general public discourse around, let's just say video games, for example, we kind of we often focus on sort of maybe the wrong thing, like the conversation we hear about probably maybe more than anything is like violence in video games which, okay, fine. That's a fine thing to discuss. That's always been there. That issues before video games, it was movies or music, before rock music, it was this kind of music, it's an age.
There is a difference. Thing. There is a difference. And this is interesting. We had a lot of conversations about this. So the games now, particularly if you're in virtual reality or enhanced reality or a variation of that. So violence is not new, but now you are in the position of being the one with the automatic machine gun and doing the killing and mowing down very real looking human beings. Yeah. As opposed to, 8-bit blips, on how I grew up. Right. So it is highly realistic and you have a gun looking device in your hand. And to get points, you're killing. Maybe it's aliens, but in some games, you're killing people. Yeah. And it's incredibly violent, very graphic. And so there is a distinction when it's not just what you're watching. You're immersed in the violent experience. Yeah. That's the point. And that may be great or not for adults. But if you hand that to an 11-year-old and expect that not to have an impact, you're in for a surprise because it will.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how that's good for anybody to become desensitized to the idea of murdering somebody, especially when you can walk out your door and so easily acquire a tool to do that in a world where tensions are so high that you may feel inclined to do that. It's a recipe for disaster.
And again, just to repeat, we have 3 game consoles in my home. We're gamers. But for me, it was very important to me as a dad and a parent to be watching what games my son wanted to play. Sure. And I'm the strict parent in the house, right? I'm a former federal prosecutor. So I work with the NSA now. No surprise, I'm strict dad. And I didn't care what the other 14-year-olds were playing. Grand Theft Auto was a non-starter. And I was crystal clear. And I don't mean maybe when I say no, I mean no. So I was paying attention to the games and not just the name of the game, but the next upgrade or iteration of it to make sure that because there's violence in games and some of it's fine, but in some games, right? I don't know if you know this and you will later, you can buy hookers and you can buy cocaine and do a drug deal inside the game.
I mean, that's not even a new thing. Like that when we were in high school, you could do that in Grand Theft Auto, I think, right?
Right. Right, but now the hookers look like hookers.
Yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I just to clarify, like, I don't mean it's not a discussion worth having.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, my concern is that it shadows other discussions that should be happening around the exact same, essentially, topic, right? And I feel like there's room to have both of these discussions, you know?
So what we didn't talk about, which in some ways is great because it often starts a conversation and it's the wrong question, which is, how much screen time is okay for my 8-year-old, right?
Yeah.
It's the wrong question.
Yeah.
And when we talk about screens, I mean game consoles and the phone and the tablet, the iPad, now the TV, all of that, right? They're all screens. All screen time is not the same. And so it's not a matter of your kid needs to only have an hour or 2 or 3. It's what is your kid doing online when they're at the screen? And it's not that all games are equally bad. It's that, what kind of game is it? What is your kid doing? Do you understand it? And guiding your kid to have, the idea as dad is to guide my son to have the most benefits from this incredibly diverse, robust online world and try and minimize the harm and the risks of harm to the extent possible. Like, that's what we're shooting for. And so it was never for us like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but what are you doing? Where are you doing it? Who else is doing it with you? And then training him on certain things about permanence and things being public. I'm a very passionate person around location privacy. You could have a whole show on that because it's a very big deal, because these apps are tracking our kids and allowing our kids to track other kids. And that's highly problematic.
Jeez.
But, my kid wanted Snapchat. I did not let him have it for years after other kids had it. And then when he got it, the deal was you may not use Snap Maps. You cannot give your location out to all your friends. It's a feature that I could go on for a long time about why that's not appropriate for 13-year-olds.
That was a thing that I learned from your show. That blew me away, that's a thing that exists at all.
The problems that can cause when you can see where everyone is, I mean, never mind like stalking the friend and showing up on their date to, it's like, oh, you can actually look and see all your friends are at someone's house, but you're not.
Right. Yeah, there's the obvious sort of creepy implications to it. But then there's this whole host of other, like, what is this doing to our brains, our kids' brains, when they have this information,
That is not a good thing for a 13-year-old or 14-year-old to be able to see where all my friends are on Friday night or wherever, right?
The other thing I think about is, and I know I want to keep this, try to keep this centered on privacy because it's your area of expertise. But obviously we're talking some about social media here. Is when we were growing up, if I was curious about violence and carnage, I knew what video game I could go to to get that. If I wanted to see a topless woman, I had to go looking for that online. Right. And now suddenly we're in a world where the most gruesome things that you can imagine just sort of fall into your lap online. You don't have to go looking for it. It's just there. So I guess our kids have to develop thicker skin, to just know. And we have to understand that they're going to be exposed to things that we don't want them to see long before we're ready to have conversations about it.
I think that's completely right. And you could unpack that for hours and look at technology issues, company issues, liability issues around that. I again want to point back to Silicon Valley and companies and say they need to be doing a better job on platforms, particularly when they know there are kids there. And let me be clear, they know who's there and being able to have age appropriate content and tools that effectively work. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to prepare our kids for what they're going to see online and engage with. And that covers everything from cyberbullying and hate speech and racism and, white supremacy to pornography, behaviors like self-harm, and being equipped to, at a minimum, flag it and know when to ask about it or to be alarmed or concerned about what you're engaging with. And then I'll harp on another piece that this is the most difficult one for me in many respects going forward, is training not just our children, but all people in America that so much of what you're going to see is not true.
Good Lord,
and it's more difficult than you think, because I don't mean simply that if you read an article that says the sky is green, you should know that the article may not be true and you want to check sources, right? I still have to tell my kid, YouTube is not a source, right? Who said it in what video, right?
Yeah.
You can't footnote the internet. It was the web. So training them about learning about sources is just the beginning. Because in this new world of ours with machine learning and AI, there is so much out there that is fake and false, right? Deep fakes. And it may actually look like an authoritative source, but it will not be.
Yeah.
And we're going to all have to grapple with this. And there is no answer right now.
Yeah.
And I know there's no answer. I'm working with the best of the best. And, content moderation online is something we don't know what to do about.
Right.
Just because somebody has 5 million subscribers doesn't make them an authority on the subject matter. It means that they have found the way to optimize their content to get people to watch it.
Yeah.
But even worse is, so let's get beyond that and say, okay, maybe they are an expert, right? But you may be watching a video of the expert saying something and it may not be the expert.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so many components to this. We saw this play out in the election in 2016 with state actors trying to manipulate Americans with false posts, false information, repeating things that were not true. So we're going to have to train our children to approach things like in the real world, but online in particular, with a healthy degree of skepticism. And, that's bad for e-commerce. And Silicon Valley doesn't want to say this over and over because their whole thing is trust the internet because we want you to be there and buy there.
Yeah.
But the fact is we're entering a world where it's going to be very difficult to trust sources going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Things like building up a sense of skepticism, critical thinking, just building up the mechanism in our kids to understand, like their bullshit meter. You know what I mean? Like there are fundamental things that I feel like we got to start as early as we can to help our kids understand if something's not feeling quite right, then there's a high probability that it's not right.
That's correct.
And you got to really consider at that moment.
Here again, there are some laws in place around, loosely speaking, defamation and libel and fraud, but they don't go far enough. They don't apply. They're difficult to enforce. And so we're going to need to explore things, regulation and laws around this, and start contemplating things about liability and not just letting entities off the hook. It's, I realize okay, so TikTok didn't make the video that incited the riot, but they did use an algorithm to disseminate it.
Oh, yeah.
It's a difficult question. I'm not advocating certain changes here or there, but we need to rethink through how we apportion or think about liability when the consequences are dramatic or can be dramatic. There are also resources out there. There are some great websites and places to go for parents, like there's Common Sense Media, and there's FOSI, the Family Online Safety Institute, and the Federal Trade Commission has things, and Children's Hospital based in Boston has an entire center on this. And so it's not about, okay, I have to go download everything and learn it.
Yeah.
There are resources for parents that can guide us and summarize the key things that we want you to know, that you should know about a given platform or device. What does it allow your kid to do? Are there ways to control it? And so those are always a good place to start, particularly if this is very new to you. And then also pick up the darn device. Learn to use your own privacy and security settings on your iPhone, right? You can turn off some track to advertising, go to your device settings and turn off the tracking, and make sure those basics at least you have.
I do wonder, and I'm sure you get asked this a lot, since your season 1 of your podcast, your son is now 3 or 4 years older. Yep. How old is he now? Is he coming up
17.
on 18? Okay.
17,
so do you feel that, he has a pretty good gauge on the topic of privacy and his own ability to sort of protect himself in that way?
I think he does. I feel pretty good. I mean, I don't monitor anything any longer. And I know that was a topic, and I think it changes it's different for different kids and it changes with age. But, at this point, I'm not monitoring. I will tell you that on his phone is an app called Life 360, and which tracks location and speed. Because frankly, at this moment in time, I'm more concerned about his driving than his web surfing.
Right.
And so, And he knows it's on there. I'm not a believer in surreptitious tracking of kids. I believe in tracking them, but they need to know. And so, that's a mobile app that we're using. So I, generally know that, if he says he's at Bobby's house and he's somewhere else. But again, like we had a conversation about this, about why we're doing this. And yes, it's there. I would never put it on his phone personally without telling him that. But I do think that he's heard from me enough. And it does, by the way, that does not mean he doesn't do dumb shit. Like he's a teenager. That's part of being a teenager, right? I did plenty of it. It's just that, I grew up in the 80s and there weren't, if we had cell phones with cameras and microphones recording what I did as a teenager, I never would have gotten my security clearance.
Yeah.
So there you go. You do dumb things as a kid. You're supposed to, but you try and guide them. And he does pretty good.
It's a topic for a conversation for another time, but it also raises this idea of we can teach our kids about privacy in terms of being aware of their privacy in relation to the world, but also they're going to want some privacy from you too.
Absolutely. And they need that, right? You can't grow up without it. For me, I remember, even though it's a long time ago, being a teenager and wanting that privacy, right? And that opportunity to, let's just say, make a few mistakes as a 16-year-old. But, one topic we haven't talked about, it's much harder as a kid now. Like, for reasons I won't go into, I have, Ring doorbells and cameras on the front and back of my home. So he can't enter and exit surreptitiously, or I may be away. And, when I was in high school, if my parents went away, I had 50 kids over. He cannot do that without me not knowing. Yeah. Because there are cameras in the front and the back, and frankly, on my neighbors' homes too. I think that's horrible. I hate the fact that I have a Ring doorbell. I hate the product, but we need to have it. But there are sensors everywhere. These kids live in a sensor world of cameras and microphones in the bathroom, in the locker room, everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. We've seen a lot from the Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, on social media usage and recommendations and loneliness. And I think that all of these, they're such big topics, but they're things that we need to be thinking about and need to be mindful of and need to be talking about with our kids. And if our tiny podcast can help contribute to inspiring conversations and turning people onto your podcast where they can learn so much more from, real professionals about it, then, I get a little bit of gratification about that. But it's been a real pleasure talking to you. And I feel like I've learned so much, and it just has me thinking about so many things.
It's a great conversation. I'm glad you're launching it. I think that we all really need to lean in and engage on this for our kids, because they can't navigate it without us.
Thank you, Marc, for joining us for the conversation, for the podcast. I'm going to say it again to our audience. Check it out. It's enlightening. It's helpful. It's fascinating. And it's a great place to begin to start thinking about this if this is not something that you're thinking about yet.
Great. Well, thank you again. And I look forward to continuing to listen to you guys.
Hey, before we jump in to a recurring segment, you remember past guest? I'm going to give you his stage name, Mr. Boo Daddy.
I do remember our friend Jeff Fyans.
Yes. Well, Jeff Fyans, he's got this whole professional career, but then on the side, he does this really fun thing where he makes music for kids. Something I can vibe with, right? Because I make music for kids. He's a little bit more produced than I am. He also markets his things a little bit, but I just wanted to tell our listeners that he released a new song in honor of Father's Day, which is called No Shirt Like My Daddy. And I just want to encourage our listeners to go check it out. We're going to leave a link in the show notes to previous guest Jeff Fyans' side music project, which is called Mr. Boo Daddy. And he's dropped a new track that I think our listeners are going to find kind of fun and interesting. Okay, what do we got? Got a recurring segment?
Let's do your instant regret. We haven't done one of those in a while. There's a catchy theme.
Let's do my instant regret.
Instant regret. I just said something stupid to one of my kids. Instant regret. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. Instant regret. Stupid. Instant regret.
let me set the stage before I say to our listeners what it is I said to one of my kids, because of all the instant regrets that we've maybe talked about. And this one really truly falls into the category of just immediate, like, and serious, just like regret. But
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Well, this will show, I mean, you know, I'm just a person. Okay. Like I have faults. Okay.
You are but a man.
I'm well aware of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a few weeks ago, my wife taken a girls trip down to Florida, see some old friends for a while. So me and the boys here, we were just a bunch of boys hanging while mommy was gone. So I was doing a fair amount of juggling. And the one night I'm sitting right here at my desk and I'm just banging away on the keyboard, trying to get a few things done. My kids are home and they're sort of starting to get a little stir crazy because I've kind of ignored them for a few minutes. You know how this happens. And one of my sons in particular tends to really overreact. Like it'll be like, you know, he can't get his sock on and he will scream as if somebody's stabbing him in the eye, right? Mm-hmm. With a hot poker, right? So, and that just happens at such frequency, so many different occasions that my wife and I both are a little bit numb to it, right? So when we hear the blood curdling scream, we don't often, it's a little bit of the boy who cried wolf sort of scenario. We don't often go running because usually when we go running, he's sitting on the floor trying to get a sock on. And it's not an emergency. So back to I'm banging away on the keyboard. Right behind me, right here, over my left shoulder, I hear a scuffle, and it's like that's my Lego. No, it's my Lego. I had it first, kind of typical, you know, scenario. And then I hear the pitter patter of one kid sort of chasing the other kid, which all of these things are very normal. And so I'm logging it in my brain while I'm trying to finish the thing. And I figured like maybe it'll blow over and then I won't even have to talk to them about it because these things happen often. The pitter patter sort of turned into like a scuffle sound, which turned into a thud sound and then turned into a blood curdling scream sound.
Okay.
All of which I still do not turn around to acknowledge. Okay. But then
it's an important email, right?
Yeah. I just want to get done with the thing so that I can really devote my attention. That's really what I want to do. I really want to devote all of my attention because it's the end of the day. And I'm just like, God, guys, let me get through this thing. After that happens, the blood curdling scream is happening behind me. And my other son kind of quickly runs up and sits next to me in the chair next to me and sort of curls up with like a sneer on his face. And when I saw that, that's the signal to me that he definitely did something to the other son who might actually be hurt.
Okay.
So I turn around and what I see is my other son, he's standing up, leaning over, and there is blood.
Oh, shit.
Everywhere. He had fallen. My other son pushed him. I don't think with the intention to, I really want to hurt my brother. Just he's being a dick. I'm going to be a dick back to him. Yeah. Pushed him. He tripped. And of the way that he describes it, because I didn't see it, was he fell against the doorknob of the front door, nose first. So just bleeding, and he's crying, and he's like salivating, which makes it seem like there's really a lot more blood than there really was.
Sure.
But in that instance, I panicked probably more than I've maybe ever panicked as a parent because it really freaked me out. It was blood everywhere, stream of blood going down to his hand, which was coated in blood and blood all over the floor. It was quite a scene. So I don't even know what I said, but I jump out of my chair. I look at him. I pick him up. I whisk him into the bathroom where there's much better lighting.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to I'm really trying to figure out what's wrong because I don't know that it's a nosebleed. I haven't heard the story yet that he hit the doorknob and it looks terrible to me. So I'm trying to clean him up and get the story. He is sobbing, can't get words out. Meanwhile, my other son is really pecking at me and I didn't mean to do it. And screaming like kind of, he's probably scared as well. Yeah. He's nervous. He's worried. And I had a really hard time in that moment to really giving both of them the attention that they deserve. And I was mad, because I'm a human being. Everything was elevated. And I turned and I said to him,
oh no,
in a very loud voice, I said, I need you to get out of here. I can't even look at you right now.
Oh, Mark.
I know.
Oh, Mark.
And I said it, and I really,
bastard.
When I said it, I really meant it. I really meant it. And he could tell. And he immediately burst into tears. So I opened the bathroom door, usher him out, slam the bathroom door so that I can turn back to my other son, who is still bleeding everywhere.
Yeah.
So I finally get him cleaned up, realize it's really just a bloody nose. And he was within an hour, fine. No lasting damage, not a single mark. But he's now on the couch and he's just holding the tissue on his face and trying to, and that gave me enough time to figure out exactly how I was going to approach my other son and apologize and own up to the fact that I was angry and I let my emotions get the best of me. And sometimes that happens, but damn, did I ever, even as the words were coming out, I heard myself saying it and thinking, oh, man, you really sound like such a dick at this moment.
And of course I'm kidding. You're not a bad dad. Like these things happen and, kids are resilient. And when you follow up with them the way that I'm sure you did, it's not going to permanently damage him. But I wonder in the moment, sometimes I have things like that happen, but if something comes out as a series of words when really what I was trying to say was something else. So like in that moment, did you mean to say exactly that? Or were you trying to say like, I can't deal with you right now? You know what I mean? It was that sort of
it was a little bit of like, I need you to get off. Cause it was literally, he was physically like trying to get my attention and, I had a more pressing thing to deal with. So it was a little bit of like, dude, get off me.
Yeah.
And a little bit
of, fuck off for a few minutes.
Yeah. We're in the smallest room in the house right now. Yeah. I need a little bit of space. And I was seriously pissed because I still didn't know at that moment how bad, if how bad the injury was, whatever, and so I was, which is a very weird thing. I don't know if parents of like multiple kids ever get into that scenario where you have this, they're both your kids, but there's still this animal sort of instinctual thing that happens where when one is hurt and if it's because of the other one, you're sort of fending off
the predator.
Like the one that,
totally.
even though it's your other kid, it's this weird, and you feel that when it's happening, and it's like
it is instinctual. It's crazy.
Very hard to put words to it.
It is super interesting that what instincts kick in like that, animalistic kind of instincts.
Yeah, but I said I need you to get out of here. I can't even look at you right now. But it was loud. The way that I said it was loud, and it was really like cutting and hurtful the way that I said it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry that happened. When you talked to him about it, what did he
He was very mad. He was very mad at me. I think we all went to bed that night, friends, but when I went to talk to him, he was arms crossed, serious grimace, and mad at me. And he let me know it.
An instant regret. You feel terrible about it, but I think, in my non-expert opinion, it sounds like you followed up the right way. And as long as you handle them with empathy and give them the attention they deserve, then that's life.
True. Instant regret and still regret.
All right, I'm going to tear through some of this closing stuff because we're going to have another long episode on our hands, and that's just the way it is.
It is just the way it is. Just like that song.
Dads and moms listening, thank you for coming back for part 2 of our chat with Marc Groman. It was a great episode. I think this 2-part series, Mark, I think is one of my favorites of ours.
Agree.
Dads and moms, you can find Modern Dadhood, just as a reminder, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher, Spotify. You can also find Modern Dadhood on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Just look for us on all the places.
We're out there.
Please do subscribe and leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen. That would be a huge help for us. Also, please tell a friend about the show this 4th of July. If you're getting together with friends, shooting off some sparklers, mention Modern Dadhood. Mention that you like it, and maybe they would start listening too. That would be a dream come true for Mark Checkett and me.
Yeah. And listen, hey, point the fireworks away from your face, please.
For God's sake.
This year. Thanks. You can purchase t-shirts and hoodies on the website. They come with a sticker, a free sticker. They ship all apparel ships with a free sticker. While you're on the website, you can contact us through the form on the website, or you can email us at hey@moderndadhood.com. You can tell us to just pound sand if you want. You can also give us some ideas for some new topics. We're always looking to explore new topics. I want to say thank you to Casper Baby Pants and Spencer Albee for the theme music that you hear on the show when we flip things around. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm flipping things around. I want to say thanks to Pete Morse at Red Vault Audio for making us sound delicious. He does all the hard work. I'd like to say thank you to Marc Groman for spending so much time with us, for his wisdom, for his insight, and for giving us so much to think about and explore with his podcast, which I recommend to all of our listeners to check out the show Their Own Devices. And lastly, Adam, is there anything you'd like to say?
Thank you for listening.
I felt like I was in a movie theater just then.